The new Outlaw Pass has been released and players are not happy. I've seen many comments on this channel, Twitter, Twitch, and I've also looked at other people's channels, seen their comments, seen their reactions, seen some of their polls. And there's an astounding amount of people that are not pleased. So the big question is, why does Rockstar push content that players don't enjoy? It sounds like a simple question. Find the content that players like and push that content to the game, but it's actually not a simple solution. This video is going to be very business heavy, very game design heavy, and very stat heavy, but I will be breaking everything down so hopefully it's easy for you to understand. Now this has all been brought up because recently I went on PvP Cat's podcast. And it was an honor to be there. I was very excited to talk Red Dead Online, and I have watched some of the previous episodes. Every guest that has been on before has had questions about why Rockstar pushes certain updates, and why they're not doing highly requested features that the community are asking for. And instead of coming on and just being another person that helplessly questions everything a game developer does, I wanted to actually provide some answers. I felt comfortable doing so as I have got game design experience, with 3 years at university, working in indie startups, some being successful, some being unsuccessful, being offered high positions with certain game companies, and being around industry experts every single day. But during the podcast, things did get a little bit heated. And it's fair to say this isn't my proudest moment, but I came away thinking that players are frustrated because they simply don't understand. There is a lot of variables at play, so I'm taking it upon myself in this video to explain everything. And just to make sure that I'm not just making everything up and chatting out my ass, I have linked references to everything that I'm talking about in the description down below. Firstly, before we get into anything, we need to understand two words which is an integral part of analyzing a target market: the demographics and the psychographics. Demographics is the analysis of the characteristics of populations, and this might sound a bit confusing, but it is simply the study of a population based on factors such as age, race, sex, religion, spoken language, employment, education, and income. Psychographics, on the other hand, is the study of people's attitudes, so this is their values, desires, and beliefs. If you can study and analyze your target market audience, you can create more appropriate products to better serve that audience, and in the case of gaming, push better content and more enjoyable content. Well, at least hopefully they're going to do that. And this is important for this video. You'll see why I'm bringing this up in just a sec. Just remember what is demographics and what is psychographics. So how does all of this link back to Rockstar pushing crap updates? This also comes back to why things got a bit heated on PvP Cat's podcast. Well, because of your age, race, sex, and more importantly your beliefs, you are a part of a very unique, smaller group within a much larger community. And because you are part of a smaller group, it is easy to believe that by me asking you guys a question, the answer you give me back can be scaled up to that original larger group. For example, if I was to go and put out a poll such as this, which has over 20,000 votes and getting 93% of the votes saying Outlaw Pass 5 is the worst. And we can now take this data within a very small select group and scale it up to be the whole larger group. A lot of people believe this, but it's not how it's done, and it's certainly not how an industry expert will analyze their games. We can very easily put this to the test with some very basic numbers and a very basic question. Rockstar have confirmed they've sold 36 million Red Dead Redemption 2 copies. And for the sake of this not getting too complicated with maths where I just confuse absolutely every single one of you, let's just say that those 36 million copies represent 36 million players. And with this number, I wanted to know exactly how many of those 36 million players actually follow Rockstar on Twitter. Now we can see Rockstar has 11.9 million followers. And yet again, to keep things simple on this side so I don't confuse everyone, we're going to round this up to 12 million, and we're also going to put this in a hypothetical situation where all 12 million of them are there for Red Dead Redemption 2. And doing it this way would actually be a disadvantage for what I'm trying to prove. This actually puts it in the best case scenario for the opposing argument. But let's say I wanted to know how many of those players that bought Red Dead Redemption 2 and then followed Rockstar Games on Twitter. Well, that's simple. You would take 36 million, which is the amount of players we have, and divide it by 12 million, which is how many players have actually followed them on Twitter, which gives us 33% of the Red Dead Redemption 2 community who played the game ended up hypothetically following Rockstar on Twitter. Pretty decent. But if we take the exact same question and ask just Rockstar's Twitter followers, how many of them follow them on Twitter. This would lead to 100% of the Rockstar fanbase on Twitter following Rockstar on Twitter after playing Red Dead Redemption 2. You can see, even though you've asked a smaller group within the whole community, that smaller group's data does not scale up. This is simply because you're cutting out a huge part of the demographics and psychographics and focusing on a specific group within the community. The more you focus on a specific group in a specific player base, the more skewed the data becomes when trying to scale it up to a larger audience. And this is just the best case example with highly exaggerated numbers to benefit the opposing argument. Real life, there's not 36 million players playing. Some players bought multiple copies across multiple platforms. The majority of the fan base is inactive. They played the game and then never touched it again. On the other side, you have Rockstar's Twitter followers. Most of them are not there just for Red Dead Redemption 2. They're interested in other games that Rockstar's offering, such as GTA. There's also a huge amount of inactive profiles and those that have created multiple accounts. What we see in this example in its most simplistic form, it does not scale up. By adding more variables to the mix and make it more complicated with real life variables, it will never scale up this way. This means that polls like this do not represent the whole community, and this is what the argument was about on PvPcat's podcast, but it is in fact representing a specific group of people within the community. And as you break it down further and further, the data becomes so specific for a particular demographic and psychographic, which only represents that audience and nothing bigger than that audience. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't break down data to smaller groups to get an overall estimate. This is what PvPcat was trying to say in the podcast. But to do this accurately, you would need a pool of players that are evenly distributed across the whole community, varying in different demographics and psychographics. Unfortunately, his YouTube channel, or anyone's YouTube channel for that matter, make it too specific. Anyone and everyone that voted all had one thing in common, and that was the platform that they're using, being YouTube. This does not take into consideration the players that play Red Dead that don't watch YouTube videos, or the players that don't even use social media. I can make an educated assumption about the players reacting, commenting, and participating in these polls on YouTube. Some of you might fall out of this range, but what we're doing here is looking at the majority. We're looking at your stereotypical average player, and the demographic is as followed. Anywhere between 18 to 34, predominantly male, being around 90% of the audience, living in United States, and English speaking. The psychographics is those that are interested in Red Dead Redemption 2, interested in Red Dead Online, has social media, avid user of YouTube, follows Red Dead content creators, wants to hear the latest news of Red Dead, and wants to get better at the game. I can safely assume that Hazard, Only PvPcat, Silentcore, Austin BMX, Rockstar Guides, we will all have very similar analytics because we are all pushing to an audience of the same demographic and psychographics. But the second you take out one of those player interests, maybe not a user of YouTube, we will see completely different results because we are now targeting a completely different type of player. So now it's time to link this all together. Why does Rockstar Games keep pushing crap Red Dead Online updates? Quite simply, the data they have does not show a negative reaction from player data from the game itself, but in fact, negative data within smaller groups of the much larger Red Dead community. We can say for sure that the specific audience that fits with the demographic of 18 to 34, predominantly male, United States, English speaking, interested in Red Dead Redemption 2, interested in Red Dead Online, has social media, user of YouTube, follows Red Dead content creators, wants to hear the latest news of Red Dead, wants to get better at the game, does not like Outlaw Pass 5. And we know this from the YouTube Red Dead Online content creators communities, such as Hazard, PvPcat, Silentcore, and Austin BMX. But when we remove the psychographic interest of those who follow Red Dead content creators, we see that in other areas such as the YouTube trailer for Outlaw Pass 5, more players like the content rather than dislike it. And this is far better than what we had for Outlaw Pass 4. This seems like a small change in psychographics, but it's a huge change in target audience, with completely different beliefs and different values. We can make a very similar change again, changing one thing into that demographic. Instead of being an avid YouTube user, you are an avid Twitter user. We can now compare Rockstar's YouTube channel to Rockstar's Twitter. In just a couple days of Outlaw Pass 5, it has more likes and a better reaction compared to the previous Outlaw Pass 4 tweets, which is a completely different reaction to what other content creators are seeing based on Outlaw Pass 5. Supposedly, Outlaw Pass 5 has been the worst one ever, but on Twitter, it's got more likes than Outlaw Pass 4. changing the target market audience again, and instead of being an avid Twitter user, you are now an avid Instagram user. Well, Outlaw Pass 4 had 363,000 views, with likes being 72,000. That works out as a 19.83% ratio for those that viewed the content and liked it. Outlaw Pass 5 in a shorter time had 289,000 views and 59,000 likes, giving it a 20.69% ratio for those that viewed the content and liked it. Now, I can talk about this all day. It was my job to go and do this exact thing. Find target market audiences and make a game to fit that audience. The point I'm trying to make here is that we can look at specific audiences within a community. We see how that community reacts to content and assume that's how the rest of the player base behaves. But when breaking down the data, we see different reactions across different target markets within the Red Dead community, with there only being one change, and that's based on platform. To get a fair result and for this to actually be scalable content, you would have to get evenly distributed data. This would be one person from every race, one person from every sex, one person from every country, one person that's employed, one person that's unemployed, one person that's been educated, one person that's been uneducated, one person that uses social media, one person that doesn't use social media, and this can go on. The more people you test and survey, the finer the result will be, but it has to be evenly distributed. With all of this in mind, it is time to wrap this up. If you have managed to make it through all of this, I want to thank you. This is far more intense than any tutorial or news I've done on my channel before. So if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below and I'll try my best to help you. But if you got to this point and you hate the new content or any content in any game, it's not a bad thing. It just comes down to the type of player you are. This is your personal demographics and psychographics, and unfortunately, they don't particularly align with the majority of that fan base for that particular content or that particular game. And this isn't a problem. No one perfectly aligns with any type of content that gets pushed. Everything that is pushed to a game is subjective. Some people may like one thing whilst other players like another thing. If I was to say the best thing about Red Dead Online is Harriet, a lot of you guys would strongly disagree and say it's something completely different. And that's just how it works. As a game designer myself, I want to provide an experience where everyone enjoys it and is happy, but unfortunately it's just not possible. So I look to create an enjoyable experience for as many people as possible within that audience I have. And any game company will do the exact same thing, because the more players you make happy, the more they play your game, and the higher chance you have to make a profit to do bigger and better things in the future. I know within this specific audience, Outlaw Pass 5 is not popular. You guys are good players, you put in time, you complete things quickly, but for the rest of the Red Dead Online community, they're not like you. And by focusing on just the hardcore players, which is you in this example, new players will never be able to play it, as it doesn't fit within the Mihai Csikszentmihalyi flow, which is the idea of the more time you spend within the game, it should increase in difficulty, otherwise it gets boring. If it's too difficult, it becomes frustrating. And if it was too difficult to do anything within the game, new players will get frustrated and never play it. And this would eventually lead to the player base dying out for that particular game, and in the end, you don't have a game to play because there's no point in any game company pushing updates. And we've seen this many times before. We know Rockstar keeps pushing updates for Red Dead Online, which suggests already they're making money back on it. We also know Red Dead Online has an upwards trajectory, with a record-breaking year for views on YouTube. And we also know it had more new players in December than any time before. This was greatly helped by the online standalone, but we can also say that the PC release in 2019, which also helped sales for that year, was still beaten within 2020. This is because the target audience for now is still about getting those new players, and as they're focusing on it, more players are playing the game. I guarantee this time next year it will increase again. You can't just look at the individual analytics on specific channels. You can't even do it if Rockstar themselves tweeted out to their audience, because it doesn't represent the whole community. You got to look at the bigger picture. You got to look at the demographic and psychographic you belong to and look outside of it, the whole community, to see if a game is going in the right direction. At the end of the day, if there is a community with thousands upon thousands of people, and they all come together to say they hate something specific within a game, but the overall player base keeps on increasing year after year, it means it doesn't actually matter to the majority of that player base. It means it's a specific group that doesn't like it. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. As said, this video is far more intense compared to anything else I've done on this channel before. I originally wasn't going to do a video on this, but because so many people reached out after the podcast on Discord and also on Twitter, I thought it made sense to explain everything. If there is anything that you don't understand, there's links in the description down below which will take you to different articles based on different design theory, which is stuff that we've talked about in this video. If you still don't understand it, then feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. But anyway guys, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going. So see ya.